What is going on, guys? It is Brad with Crush This, a Monster Truck podcast. Thanks for tuning in tonight, everybody. Let me just put some background tunes in here as well. Oh, hopefully it's not too loud. Here. Paul Wolff on, but unfortunately he's not able to make it. So stepping in his place is Mr. Ceejay Rettew of the Rettew Motorsports Gang / the Buck Motorsports Park that his dad Zane owns. Cheech is taking the week off as well. A lot of stuff's happening. First quarter prep, dealerships. Each of them are busy gang. So I want to give a couple of shout outs to people that support us, people that give us products, shout us out on their shows and stuff. High Octane Coffee, Joe Sylvester. Thank you, Joe, for all that you do for us. He was our very first guest on the show. He's selling some body panels. Go check out his Facebook page for that. J Concepts, Fred and Jason from J Concepts. They sponsored Cheech, Josh Rhodes, so many of our buddies that race the RC stuff. They from bodies to wheels, tires, you name it. J Concepts has it. JB Scale Graphics, John Arnold. They're doing some stuff in house. Finally, they got their printer set up. They're actually a sponsor of Paul Wolff as well, providing wraps and stuff for them. But if you need anything from Bigfoot, Bad Habit, Obsessed, Obsession, a lot of teams do stuff with JB Skull Graphics for the RC stuff. So check out JB Skull Graphics. 6B Apparel, Chris with 6B Apparel. Thank you for all that you do for us. It's getting cold, you guys. Go get you guys some hoodies. They're $100 a pop. You have to either message me or Cheech for those. Backshot Productions, Nick Davis. Thank you, Nick, for providing awesome content. Shouting us up in your show. Thank you so much for that. Justin Story with his book Making Tracks on Amazon, $10 a pop. Go check that out. Also, I believe it's on C Nova Comics. Go check that out. Hall Brothers Racing. Thank you to Hall Brothers for the sponsorship for our decals or decals. That means a lot to us. You see them on a bunch of different trucks. Repping the Summit, old school Summit Bigfoot shirt. We've got to rep Dan the Man. Thank you, Hall Brothers, for those decals. You see them on a bunch of trucks. The Overboard Team, Stomper, American Scout, Raminator, Ramnition. MTRC, Scale Monster Truck Racing, Kobe Marshall, thank you for the awesome intro, and keep an eye out for some more footage on Instagram. I know Dan was up there at the Moon Base filming some stuff with Josh Rhodes and everybody, so go check that out. And me, Bradley Shaw Designs. Go check out my website, bradleyshawdesigns.com. I'm actually going to be tonight with CJ. He drives a truck designed by myself. He's actually driven two of them, Pretty Wicked and the new Stinger Unleashed. So thank you to the Rettew Motorsports Gang and Zane and Lindsay and CJ for allowing me to create some awesome stuff for them. So, all right, guys, we will play the intro here and get on to the interview with CJ, guys. So stay tuned.
This isn't your typical motorsports podcast. You're listening to Crush This, a monster truck podcast presented by High Octane Coffee and J Concepts. A show where we take you inside the minds of your favorite drivers, past and present, of the monster truck industry. And now, your hosts, Brad Shaw and Dan Chichagash. Buckle in. The show starts now.
And beside me here virtually is Mr. Ceejay Rettew, driver of Stinger Unleashed. CJ, how's it going tonight, man?
Not too bad. It's been a while.
Yeah, it's been about just over 2 years since I got to see you last and hang out with you when I was down there for that show at Abbottstown, Pennsylvania. A lot has happened since then. If people don't know kind of what's happened with your family, because at that point you guys were based out of Delaware, Camden, Delaware. And, that's where the team was located, Renegade, everything. You guys have moved back to Lancaster, Pennsylvania. Talk to us about, that change in moving and being based back home in your hometown. Can you hear me? Hello? Oh, did TJ? I think I lost him. I think I might have lost CJ. Oh, there we go. Now I got you again.
I'm back now.
So did you hear any of the question there?
Yeah, I heard most of the beginning.
Yeah, so talk about, moving from, Camden, Delaware, where you guys were based out of for, I think it was 2 or 3 years, possibly. I'm not too sure how long you guys were there. Back to Lancaster, and then kind of what's been happening since, because a lot has changed for you guys.
Oh yeah, it's been a wild ride. A couple years ago, more than a couple years ago, my parents decided we were going to all move the whole operation out to Delaware and run the monster trucks from there. And that was some of the hardest hitting Monster Jam seasons we ever had, every weekend back to back to back. And then COVID hit and pretty much everything stopped. And then we started up Renegade, middle to the end of COVID. And after the first Renegade season, we made some decisions and decided it was time to move back. We missed Lancaster and just everything about it. We just had to drive so far to see family. All of our sponsors are up here. It wasn't right being down there. So moving back, it was great. We moved back and sold off a bunch of the trucks when we got the offer to buy the Buck, and bought that place, and now we're down to one truck, one ride, and I took over the driving duties.
It's kind of interesting how the Renegade stuff came about. I remember your dad messaging me and wanting me to design the logo and a lot of the branding for that. And it's cool with 2020 in a way. Like, the cool part about it is all these independent promoters and teams started doing their own stuff. You guys started doing your own stuff. Jimmy Cretin, then you had the Throwdown Tour doing a lot of stuff. All Star, which you guys have done some stuff with in the past. Talk about Renegade and what it's meant to you guys, and the kind of just natural growth that brand and the company has had.
Oh, without Renegade, I don't really think any of us knew what was going to happen. When COVID hit and everything stopped, like, not even just the monster truck industry, the whole world just came to a halt. And I don't think anyone knew what was happening. And it was one of those give it a shot and hope it doesn't fail kind of situations. And Renegade started, and it kind of just took off. And thankfully it escalated the way it did, and we are where we are now. And we're going to be coming up on season 3 now, and I'm excited.
No, I'm definitely excited. It's cool to be a whole part of that, and you guys graciously flew me out back in October 2020 to the show aforementioned in Abbottstown, Pennsylvania. And you guys put on one heck of a show, like when you guys were running the minis and everything. And it's cool seeing the growth of your guys' team. I remember I created the original Rettew Motorsports logo back ages ago, and to be able to work with you guys still, it's awesome to see the growth and everything. You guys, you mentioned you guys sold some trucks to the Triple B team, and those guys are one of the mega teams in the sport now, I consider them. Was it hard for you guys letting go of a lot of those trucks that have been around for a long time?
I don't know how hard it was for everyone else. It was kind of hard for me, especially because, I've been around monster trucks my whole life, and seeing what my dad built and where we were and how many trucks we had, it was surreal to me, to see that I'm a part of that big of an operation. But realizing what we were getting rid of to gain was a big a big move, and I mean, it definitely worked out for the better, and I'm happy that they decided to do what they did, and I'm just 2023 is going to be a great year.
No, and in 2022 for you guys was a big year. I believe this was technically the second or third season with Renegade, if I'm not too sure. There was the 2020, 2021, and then this year, which would have been technically the third season. And also, you guys debuted a brand new body and livery for Stinger Unleashed. Talk about, this past Renegade season, and then talk about the decision to change from the Ford and go with the OBS Chevy.
Well, I had no clue. So last year, I'll just go back to then. I had no clue what was happening. We showed up to Franklin, Pennsylvania, for our Renegade show. Well, I guess it would have been 2 years ago now. A year ago. Showed up to Franklin, Pennsylvania to do our Renegade show. Got everything unloaded, tired up. Came in the next day, I believe, to get everything pulled down, and I started having trouble with the mini truck, and we couldn't figure out what it was. Worked all day, tried figuring it out, and we just came to the decision it was time to just load it back up, and we'll figure it out at the shop because we had to get moving. And about 20 minutes later, my dad called me over, and he talked to me, and we had a conversation, and he decided it was time to let me take the ropes of Stinger and drive that for once, and it was one of the greatest feelings of my life. I don't think I'll ever have another adrenaline rush run like I did that night. To be able to represent Stinger, go out there for my first time ever in that truck, over a bus, laying down a pretty good run, I feel. It was just a great night. And I didn't think it was going to become what it did. Came around to the 2022 season, and he pretty much just told me, he's like, I'm passing the driving duties on to you, and it's all on you now. So went around, did the season. We got about half to 3/4 of the way through, and we started talking because the Raptor body was getting a little rough. I rolled it over a couple times, and we wanted to switch it up a little bit. I was talking to one of the guys helping us with Renegade, and it was just one of those things that we were messing around with, planning it out, joking around about it. And 2 weeks later, I came into the shop with a surprise from my dad, and I saw Stinger with a Chevy body on it and Brad's wrap, and I about started crying because it was just crazy to see an idea that I wanted so bad come to life.
It's kind of funny how that wrap came together. The original version was on an OBS Ford, and I was just messing around in Illustrator one day because this is when I was still newer to Illustrator, so I'm trying to learn things, just mess around on my own. And I sent an early mock-up of that to your dad, and he was like, I like that. And then we started working on some stuff for the Buck, and then it kind of got serious, like, hey, let's go ahead with this. And the hard part about that design was there's no templates that I could find for an OBS Chevy. So I kind of had to make my own, and it created some complications. And thank you to Stephanie over at 717 Wraps and Graphics, which I know is one of your guys' major sponsors. She was able to make it work like she always has. And it's cool that, you're one of the kind of few that have driven more than one of my design. There's you, there's Colton, who's driven Pretty Wicked, and now he's trying to out. And speaking of Colton, talk about, there's a lot of young guns in this sport. You have you, Colton, Shane Plato, so many young people in this sport that are just killing it right now. Talk about, being a part of that and, seeing their growth and as well as yours.
Oh, it was great. When we first got the mini trucks, it was one of those things that we always talked about, and I always dreamed about having one, but never actually thought it would come to life and happen. I always thought I'd have to wait until I got my seat in the big truck. And the first season I had with the mini trucks was great. That first Patriot truck I had was amazing, wheelie machine. I got to run up against Colton. Always wanted to go up against Shane and some of the guys out west, but never got an opportunity. Hopefully in the future, now that we're all moved on to the big trucks, that would be something that could happen. But seeing all of us move on similarly around the same time, I think has been a great experience for all of us. And, just talking and learning from each other, what Colton does or what Shane does or what I do, just what everyone does differently. I think we can all grow and help each other as we progress through the industry.
When you first started driving the big truck, coming from the Mini, was there, certain similarities that helped you adjust to the full size truck? Or was there a lot of, harder adjustments to get used to, with the more horsepower, bigger size and everything?
Well, if I'm being completely honest, I was really scared the first time I ever drove a big truck. Uh, I was so pumped up weeks coming ahead because I only found out maybe 2, 3 weeks before that. He texted me when I was in school and he's like, "Hey, you want to drive mom's truck next week in Beckley?" And I'm like, "Obviously." And I was so pumped up, ready to go. The night before I started getting kind of nervous, and then it came at time, and I'm like, "Oh, here we go." And driving the mini truck was always great. They always landed good, and you could air them out for their size. And now stepping up from a little four-cylinder Honda motor to a big block Chevy that's putting out like 8 times as much power, it was just crazy. And I would not have been able to do it without my dad there. He just kept pushing me through, kept making sure I was okay, calmed me down, got me through it. And I do think there was some things that helped me from the mini truck move on to the big truck, just sliding around, staying in the throttle, not landing in the throttle, not landing in the brake, just some of that stuff. But it was definitely a big change going from the small truck to the big.
One major change that you guys also had is, you guys were one of the first to get a metal shop mini chassis. You guys were kind of heavily involved in the development of that. You guys were very close location-wise to the metal shop. I remember going there with your dad and one other person there and seeing their operation. Talk about that, whole thing with the metal shop mini monster. Oh, Colton just put a little comment in there. Lay it to the mat and ride the lightning. It'll be all right. So yeah, talk about the metal shop mini monster, because that was, a very unique piece, when it was debuted and everything like that.
Oh yeah, that was great. I can't thank Rick enough for that. He gave me one of the biggest opportunities I've ever had. He sponsored the truck to me, and he saw what I did the year before, and he met with me. We got together, we talked about it, and he told me, he's like, "I want you to go out and support us and show everyone what these trucks can do." And that truck, I honestly think that thing lands better than a full size truck does.
Oh, wow.
And I mean, I have beat that thing like down to the ground and back, up over a full size van, up over a bus. It wheelies, haven't rolled it over, but Garrett, my little brother, is now taking over the reins of that truck. So hopefully we'll see more of him in 2023 coming up. But it lands great. We have a little bit of tweaking to do with the motor, hopefully get a little bit more power out of it, but it was an overall great truck, and I honestly can't thank the metal shop, all the guys down there. They do some great work, and Rick enough for that opportunity.
And now you're driving the full-size metal shop chassis. Compare that to some of the other chassis, because I remember you guys had a PEI, and then you had a Cohen, I believe, which was the one before the metal shop chassis. Talk about, the differences between each chassis, because, do they drive different than each other? Do they handle different? Like, what's some of the similarities and differences between the chassis that you've been in so far?
So I never got the chance to drive the Cohen, but I did drive a Patrick truck. And I will tell you, the biggest difference between a Patrick truck and a metal shop truck is how squirrely they are. A Patrick truck is more off the edge, and you tweak the steering a little bit to the left or to the right, and the whole truck's moving around, and it's a fun truck to drive. It's all over the place. You really got to pay attention to what you're doing and make sure you're not getting crazy with it and rolling it over. The metal shop truck, you can pretty much throw anything at it and it will take every hit. It's really more of a force to drive, I'd say, just because of how bulky it is, and it's built to run in the big stadiums with all the bigger guys. It's meant to take the big jumps. It's meant to be flung around. It's meant to do what all those stadium guys do, and it does just that. It takes every beating you give it and throws at it. But they're all fun trucks to drive, and it's pretty fun being able to just say that I drove a Patrick truck and drive the metal shop truck now, just to see the comparison between the two and how they all handle differently.
One big change, last year and also this year was your family purchasing the Buck Motorsports Park there down in Lancaster. Your dad, I've heard lots of stories from him, and we messaged back and forth about how he grew up going there. There's pictures of him, at a very young age wearing the "See You at the Buck" shirt, and that's one of his favorite places in the world. And now you guys own it, like it is yours. And you guys have put a lot of effort and money and time into that place, revamping it. You guys are right now actually, I believe, widening it and making it a little bit bigger for other events. Talk about, what it's like having, you guys owning the Buck, because it's such a legendary venue in the tractor pulling world, demo derby, monster truck world. What is it like being a part of that history even more now with you guys owning it?
So I never knew, I always knew that the Buck was a special place in Lancaster, and it meant a lot to everyone there and in the surrounding areas. People from Delaware, Virginia, sometimes all over around PA come to watch. And it's a special place. But when we first purchased it, it was one of those things that I was like, it's cool and all, but it's not really what I want. I'm going to stick with the monster trucks, head over heels. That's what I'm doing. And as we've put more time into it, I've spent more place there. I've learned so much history and all the people there, just all the tractor pullers, the truck pullers, the derby guys, the monster truck guys that have been there, all the competitors. You learn so much history in just a short amount of time from being there. And it's really grown on me, and it's starting to become a real special place to me. And knowing how much that place means to my dad and my family, it really is starting to mean something to me. And it's crazy. We still couldn't believe that it was ours, up until a couple months ago. I still, walked around there, and we were doing events every weekend, and it was still one of those things that it was almost like we were just working there. We were just doing a monster truck show there. But then you realize, hey, this is ours, and we got to make sure that we do the best we can with it and keep the legacy moving on.
Now, I remember when your dad first told me kind of about it. I knew a little bit ahead of the official announcement to work on logos and ideas, and it's cool to see that somebody that values that place like your dad, now he's the owner. And I know from meeting your dad, hanging out with him, and talking to him for the last couple of years, he puts 110% effort in whatever he does, and the upgrades that he has done to that place, new bathrooms, new shop, new everything, it shows that he's dedicated to that. And, you've got to do some events there this year with some of the monster truck shows and also demo derby. Talk about doing the shows there, because it's such a tight venue and it's a different format than what a normal monster truck show would be. Talk about kind of that aspect of competing at the Buck in the Monsters, and then talk about your demo derby experience that you had and the combine demo derby too.
I was just going to say, I just got to throw it out there that if you ever get the opportunity to drive a combine in a demolition derby, please do it. It was one of the most fun experiences I think I've ever had. Taking this giant harvest agricultural machine and slamming them into each other from across the track, it was wild. The derby was too. I knew going in that I wasn't really going to win. I was going more to just destroy something, because you can't really just go take your anger out on a truck and not have it break. So when I was building the derby car and time was coming and ticking down to the derby, it was one of those things, I'm going in to destroy this thing. I don't care what it's going to cost. So I went in one end to the other, just to the floor, back and forth, and I made it pretty far in it, but it was so much fun. And I'm rebuilding the car to run at New Year's Eve. But you asked about the monster truck shows there, and it definitely is a different format. We don't, at a normal Renegade show, we'll do introductions, two-wheel skill, racing, depending on the arena, how small, how big it is, side-by-side or time trials, sometimes donuts and freestyle. And at the Buck, at those other venues at Renegade, you have buses, vans, cars, dirt jumps, logs, tires, you name it, we probably have it. We jumped over a boat this year, a camper, all kinds of stuff. And going from those events to the Buck is a big mind changer, because you really got to get yourself in the mental space to realize you're running in a 60-foot wide space, and you already have a 12-foot wide truck. So running right there, people sitting right outside of those barriers, 20, 15, 20 feet behind them, it's really was a mind game for me at first, like, what if something goes wrong? But everyone had my back behind me, and it was one of those things that I kind of knew how to do it, and I watched videos weeks and weeks ahead and just kept watching and making sure that I knew what I was going to do. And it is tight. It was real tight, and you really got to be able to drive a truck to spin it around down at both ends of that place and keep your momentum up and clear the cars and hit the cars, because you only have one car stack out there. It's 6, 7, 8 cars they get added one after every truck, and you got to put on a show for those fans. And especially it being my hometown, I got to make sure that I go and burn it down every time.
One kind of cool aspect of the monster truck shows of the Buck that I've seen through years and years of footage is the side-by-side flat drags. And I think that is so neat. It's just 2 trucks. Whoever has the most horsepower wins. Talk about that, because that is something different. You're normally used to, side-by-side racing, going over some cars. Now you're just flat on the throttle. You don't have to lift or nothing until the end. How different is that compared to, doing a straight line drag track with cars and stuff?
Oh yeah, racing altogether is probably my favorite competition that we do. And at the Buck, one of those things that you kind of think it's going to be boring, but until you actually get out there and you're racing down the track, full throttle or whatever, you don't have any obstacles in front of you. It's just 2 trucks, more horsepower wins, and to get into that finish line, it's crazy. And it was one of the funnest experiences I've had in a monster truck, because I never really got to experience the full power that Stinger had up until that point. You're sitting at the line, you're waiting for it to go green, and as soon as it goes green, it's just like a rocket ship, and the truck lifts off, and you're just drag racing right beside. You got to make sure you stay in your own lane, but it was so much fun, and it is definitely a neat experience and something different from a normal monster truck event.
One thing that I like that you guys did a Stinger this year was put zoomies on it. Thank God. I'm zoomies are the best thing ever, and seeing zoomies back on your guys' truck, that thing just sounds so mean and pissed off. What motor do you guys have that in Stinger currently?
Don't quote me on this, because I never can remember. I think it's a 545.
Okay. Yeah, you guys do a lot of, kind of legendary events. I know you guys are doing Gaithersburg, Maryland for quite a long time. You guys have been doing that. Seekonk in Massachusetts. Talk about those events, because those are some events that always get a lot of good coverage. You guys have been doing those events for quite a long time, because I think you guys went to Seekonk at least 2 or 3 times this year, if I'm correct on that. Talk about doing those venues and, the fans and stuff like that in those areas, because it seems that they're just hungry for monster trucks.
Yeah, we're on Gaithersburg is, I believe, 11th, 12th, maybe 13th year now doing that venue. And I've been there every year that we've done it, been there for every show, and seeing the progression and starting to finally be able to compete in the events was one of the best things ever. Going to a place for so many years, it starts to mean something to you, seeing monster trucks there. It's the biggest show we do, 8 trucks. I think one time we might have had 10 trucks. There's been so many memories made at that place, and to be able to go from the mini truck there, the second or first year we did Renegade, to be able to compete in the big truck this year against some of the best guys there is, it was crazy. And Seekonk means something to me too, because I've been going there every year that we've done it. I know we haven't done it as long as Gaithersburg, but hopefully maybe we can do it as long as Gaithersburg. And I believe that was only the second time I ever drove Pretty Wicked. I drove it at Seekonk, and then to be able to go there, and Dad drove one time this year, and then for me to be able to go and drive again, it's just a fun place to go. A nice asphalt track. You don't got to worry about your truck getting dirty. Just some cars. It was great.
And shout out to my buddy Dalton Hastings, who is around from that area. I know he did some filming for those shows this year for his YouTube channel. So if you want to check out CJ driving at Seekonk, go check out Dalton's footage for that. One cool thing I feel like with you and certain other younger drivers is you guys have grown up in the sport around a lot of legends, guys like Larry Swim and so many people. Talk about the influence on you with some of those guys. I know Larry can be kind of a prankster and stuff from what I've heard. Talk about the influence with some of the legends and people that you've been able to grow up around.
Larry, I was around him my whole life, and he definitely had some influence on me. And anyone you ask that knows that I hung around him, you can definitely tell I got it from him. But there's been so many great guys over the years that I was lucky enough to be able to hang around. I got to be around Dan Runte. I was around Jim Kramer for a couple years, Larry Swim for a long time. Some of the greatest Bigfoot drivers there were, and many more. It's a real crazy experience to be able to see. And like just today, I was going back watching videos from like the Silver Dome in like 97, 98, old videos of that from like the TNT days, and seeing all those drivers from back then and what they did and their progression in the sport and what a mark they made, and to put the path down for drivers like Shane and Colton and me. And, Gage, I know he's building a truck up there, a new truck for 2023. It's really surreal to be able to say that I was around them for so long.
And that's one thing that I respect about a lot of you young guys. You guys look at the history of the sport as well. There's a lot of people, and I don't want to bash on a lot of the current drivers that just come into the sport all of a sudden, but you guys know your history, and you're mentioning you're watching stuff from the Silverdome from back in the 90s, and I love hearing that because a lot of people forget about the actual history of the sport and all the eras, the TNT, Penda, and stuff like that. If there would be one era you could go back to and race in, what era would that be?
Probably the Penda days. How competitive it was, and just all the drivers, and everyone with their they're progressing into bigger trucks, Excalibur, Executioner, all these bigger trucks that are just going out there and laying it all down. And to be able to compete back then with Bigfoot and Snakebite, when they're all like the big guys, you got to go out there and beat them. It's just crazy. Definitely would be one of the eras I'd want to go back to. And even like when we were in with Monster Jam for a while, I went to pretty much every semi-close show that we did, and I never realized it, but like those were the same arenas that they were running in back in the older days. And being able to stand in like a tunnel where Dennis debuted Gravedigger, where he ran like Gravedigger number 3, or it was one of the craziest things to be able to stand there and look at a place that's still holding the same events, 20, 30 years later.
I had that exact same feeling when I was in Canfield and the Indy Fairground for the Jamboree. Like, I'm standing where, Fred Schaefer, Andy Brass, Dan Runte raced. Like, it was such a surreal kind of moment. And you think back to, so many memories, like even passing through Lima, Ohio on the way to Canfield. I'm like, hey, this is where the infamous wheelie run happened. It's such a cool thing. I want to shift gears a little bit from the Monsters. I know that you're part of the Penn Manor FFA. You're repping the hoodie right there. I think I designed kind of, in a way, the logo for that, I believe. You drove a tractor to school. As a Canadian, we really don't have, like, we have 4-H and stuff, but talk about how many miles did you have to travel and why?
Well, it was 10 miles, and it's already about, it depends who's driving, but it's about 30 to 45 minutes, 20 to 30 minutes, give or take, in a car. So school starts at 7:40. I left the Buck at like 6:30, and still barely made it there. Uh, that was one of the funnest days I think I'll ever have in high school, and one of the best days that I remember having. Uh, I came back from middle school when we lived in Delaware, starting fresh in high school back in Penn Manor, where I was, where I grew up. And I was still making friends, but everyone was pushing me to get an FFA. Hey, you need to get an FFA. You'd work great in FFA. There's so many people there you're going to get along with in an FFA. And I was like, I don't know about it, but I really started getting my toes wet in the water and, testing everything out and seeing where I fit. And FFA has been one of the greatest things that I think I've ever joined. There's so many people just like me. There's so many people that, they don't care about your background. They don't care, where you live, what you do. It's just a bunch of kids getting together, working on tractors or whatever, or, welding class, engines class, people who genuinely love, just like agricultural stuff and motors and welding and all that kind of stuff. And I got an opportunity to be able to take a tractor to school. I went back and asked Dad, and he's like, well, yeah, obviously I'm not going to say no. And it was cold, but it was one of the best things ever. And I'm hoping I'll be able to do it again this year.
I know you guys have done a little bit of fundraising for FFA with the Buck. I remember doing a little design for that. What do people think about, when you said, hey, I'm CJ, I drive Monster Truck, or, what do your fellow, peers in FFA think about the fact that, you're racing this, 12,000 pound, 1,500 horsepower beast, on weekends and such?
Well, if I'm being honest, I always try to keep it like, it's not like I was just going out like telling people.
I think I might have lost him. Oh, there we go.
Hey, can you hear me?
Yeah, I got you. Internet connection is a little bit spotty. I don't know if it's on mine or yours, but
Yeah. Good now?
oh yeah, good.
Yeah, so it was always one of those things that in elementary school, I was always running my mouth, talking about the truck, talking about this and that, and I never stopped talking about it, and people don't really care as much as you think they do, and I don't want to be one of those people that I stand out because I drive a monster truck, or I stand out because we own the Buck. I want to fit in for people liking me who I am, not what I do, not my background, any of that stuff, and they can find all the rest of the information out along the way. And as people did start finding out, it was one of those things that they thought it was cool, it was interesting, that's cool. And it's definitely one of the things I'm more grateful for, because I know a lot of people aren't as grateful to have, half the things that I do. But, there's not one day that it goes by that I take anything for granted that I have, and the parents that I have, the people in my life, everyone that I have is so supportive, and the friends that I have with FFA, it's one of the greatest things ever. Even my ag teachers are so supportive of you and always helping you along the way and encouraging you to do your best. And it's really great.
And I feel like a lot of the skills you've probably learned from your dad with, fabrication and such like that, has helped you with, the welding stuff and the engine stuff and your courses. I've always been a big fan of your dad and what he's done and what he's done for me. And, he's sacrificed a lot, and he's been in the sport a long time. What was it like traveling with him, doing the stuff with CFP and other, stuff, and just being around him and seeing how he works and how that's impacted your life and your work ethic? Because, I will say this, you're one of the hardest working young men I know in today, seeing how hard you worked when I was down there with you guys back in 2020. You bust your ass, and not a lot of this younger generation coming up is like that.
Yeah, everyone, that's another thing, going back to the whole monster truck in the school thing. People always think, oh, it's dad's money. Oh, you just get handed everything, but it's really not. I've sacrificed a lot. I've worked my entire life, been around studying everything, studying how the mechanical parts work, seeing how things go together. And I still couldn't tell you half the things on how a truck works or some of the mechanical things, but I'm still learning. And every day it's a new task, learning and fixing things on it. And Um, having a brain fart.
I have those daily, man.
You know, it's one of those things that I know I don't have to prove myself to anyone, but I always want to push myself to be better every day. And having my dad there to encourage me and, be my mentor and, we talk all the time and growing up around him definitely took or made a big impact on me because he has made me the person I am. My mom too, they always want you to be your best. You know, their biggest thing is you have to fail to succeed. And it's really opened my eyes because if you never fail and you're always succeeding, you're going to be on top. You're going to think you're on top of the world and you think that you're going to be the best there is until something does fail and something doesn't go the right way. So, having them there, it's definitely been really good. And I don't think I could have done it without them.
That's the biggest thing, like what you said, if you're not failing, then, it doesn't like, I have failed many times in my life, and it's taken a long time to get back to that, positive step. But, I'm finally there personally, what's some of your favorite, you mentioned earlier, going back, watching a lot of the old stuff from, the 90s and stuff like that, some TNT stuff. What is your normal go-tos to watch? Because like for me, I'm always watching Penda series. My fiance gets annoyed with me by, the second show. What kind of stuff are you normally watching when you decide, hey, I'm just going to watch some classic monster trucks and just kind of shut my brain off and veg out, watch some stuff that, you like to watch?
Most of the time, it's either whatever I can find on YouTube, or I like some of the TNT stuff. And honestly, if I'm being honest, kicking it back way old school with the leaf springs, you can't get much better than that. Watching those things bounce up over the cars and those guys get beat around in there, like all the drivers today. It doesn't matter if you have the best truck in the world, if you have the most expensive truck in the world, it's never gonna land 100% all the time. Like
No.
you're gonna feel the hits. You're gonna feel the hits the next day. It feels good in the moment, but when that adrenaline wears off, it's like a kick in the ass. And seeing the technology that we have and the shocks and the seats and the roll cages, and then looking at those guys with leaf spring trucks, just getting beat around in there in a bench seat with a seatbelt on is crazy. And it really makes you thankful for them putting themselves through that stuff because it's helped the industry grow. And now we are able to do the things that we have and keep it growing.
What do you think of seeing guys like Alan Fenstermaker and Earthquake, going out there and, in a leaf spring truck, but basically driving it like it's a modern day truck?
It's really cool. I watch a lot of videos of him and watching him swap back and forth from a modern truck to a leaf spring truck is crazy. And, he definitely pushes that truck to the limit. We had Jeffrey Fielding with the old red truck at the Buck for our I forget what the night was called. It was like an old school night, pretty much, with a bunch of old tractor pullers and monster trucks, and it was crazy. He's the first ever leaf sprung truck I saw perform and in real life, and it was crazy. Watching him get a beat around in there and do the things he did off some old cars. That's what monster trucks were back in the day. It wasn't freestyle. It wasn't jumping over buses, stoppies, backflips, all this crazy stuff. It was two guys out on the track going crazy up over a set of cars, pop and drop pretty much up over the cars, weren't getting much air, and to see what it's become today is really crazy.
One thing that I remember you and me talking about back then, and it's kind of where me and Cheech come from, is the virtual stuff. BeamNG, rigs or rods, and stuff like that. Are you still doing stuff with BeamNG, rigs or rods? Because I know you were kind of heavily into that when I was down there back in 2020.
I used to be. I was. And I slowly stopped. Working in the shop more and just getting away from the house as much as I can. Being over at the Buck. You
need to set up kind of like what I got there for that kind of stuff. Oh, I think I lost him again. I got you there. Gotcha. You need to set up like that for that kind of stuff. Get back into it.
Did yours just freeze?
Yeah, I just froze. Can you hear me now?
Yeah, mine's been frozen for couple seconds.
Yeah, I don't know what's going on, but you need to set up like that. You
Yeah.
need one of those. I even got the rear steer handle on that.
Like I was saying, you know, getting away from the house as much as I can. I always love playing rigs and beam and all that, but I really love just going out in the shop and working some hours and learning more about the truck, learning stuff new every day. There's never anything you can't learn. You can always keep learning new stuff, even if it's not about the monster truck, even if it's not about the ride truck, the mini truck. There's always more stuff. And one person that came into my life who I'm really grateful for and came back into my dad's life right as the Bucks was starting up is an old mud racer, Charlie Stoltzfus. Uh, we call him our pit dad, our grandpa, and he has knowledge like no one else. You know, just going up and talking to him is crazy. The amount of things you can learn from him, and to be able to have him in my life the way that I do, and have him in the shop with me, helping me, fixing my stuff when it breaks, and teaching me is a really great experience.
You know, one other person that I remember hanging out around with you guys was Forrest. You know, good old Forrest, and you know, he was an integral part of that back in the day, and you know, it seemed like at that point you guys were kind of inseparable. You guys were almost like brothers at that point. You know, I'm just trying to think of what else we've talked about a lot already so far.
Yeah, Forrest was like a brother to me, you know, and he was actually the one that we were talking one night at we went out after a show, or maybe it was the night before the show, but we went out. We were just sitting at the table at dinner, you know, talking about it, coming up with ideas, and he pulled up the OBS body and was like, "Dude, you need to do this with the big cow hood on the front and all that." And I was just looking, and I looked at it, and I instantly fell in love with it. You know, it's such a cool old truck with the square headlights in the front, rectangular headlights in the front, and I pulled up your design that you sent me from the Ford, like the 90s Ford, and I was like, we could modify this a little bit, but I think that would look so cool. And, you know, we're already over 10 years of Stinger, and it has just been a really big accomplishment in everyone's eyes. You know, he was definitely one of the people that helped us out a lot over the years with Stinger and with, you know, designing stuff and with Renegade, and he's definitely like a brother to me.
You know, one cool thing, you know, with Renegade is, you know, it's such a family environment, you know, with all the guys that run the crew, you know, from you guys. That's one cool thing that, you know, because I've been around different promoters, different shows and stuff, but you guys, it seemed like a genuine family, you know, vibe with that. You know, do you guys have any insight to kind of what you guys have planned for 2023 with Renegade? Is it kind of being scaled back a little bit, or are you guys going to go full bore, like once again, like you guys did this last year?
I can't say too much. We definitely are trying to weigh it out between being able to handle the Buck and handle Renegade all at the same time. But 2023 is going to be a great season. There's going to be a lot of action. That's all I got to say. You know, if you've never been to the Buck before and you're close to us, it's definitely one of the things that you should just come see. You know, especially now with the track expansion, we're gonna have some really great shows there. Renegade, we're gonna have some really great shows. Going back to some of the old places, adding a couple new places. You know, it's gonna be great.
You know, it's cool to be a part of it. You know, in my head, it's just a small part, but being able to design stuff for you guys and kind of be a part of the team in that way, it's been awesome. You know, one question I wanted to ask, you know, going to the big truck and learning, you know, stoppies and stuff like that. Was that hard for you to learn, you know, to kind of get to that balance point of the truck? Or was it something that kind of came in a way natural to you when you first started driving?
That's one of the biggest questions I get, other than how old are you? So the first show I ever did in Stinger, which was the first stoppie I ever did, exactly what he said was going to happen. Pulled up to the ramp, put it in first gear, hit the throttle, got it up, and it instantly went up, and it threw me up, and I thought I was rolling over, so I gunned down a bit. And the second one I did that night, got it up and walked it probably 20, 25 feet. And from there on, everyone's always like, oh, you definitely practice at home. Oh, you go out in the field, you mess around, you play with the truck, you, and it's not like that. You know, the progression you watch from the first show I did to the shows that I'm doing now and being able to hold stoppies as long as I can or walk them as far as I can. It's just learning in the show and teaching myself and watching videos of guys and seeing in-cab footage of their balances points and where it should look like. And a big thing too is in the trucks, your seat is not straight up and down. So it's kind of leaned back some. So when you're actually up in the truck, it feels like you're past vertical when you're actually not.
Oh, stupid internet.
And just learning.
I lost you there for a minute. Stupid internet.
Oh yeah.
Well, I lost you. I don't know if the fans heard, but lost you when you were talking about, how you're not straight up and down in the truck. You're more kind of leaning forward, like back in the seat.
Yeah. It's, your balance point in the truck, and something that I've always started to realize, and this is what I look out of. If you ever look in like a in-cab footage, my balance point and what I go off of is how close my front clip, the hood, and the grill is to touching the ground. I keep that point as close as I can to the ground and as touching and as close to it as I can without ripping it off. And that's kind of where it feels natural for me and where I'm able to hold them the longest. And one of my best ones I think I did was in Westminster. I had it perfectly vertical and it stood there, and everyone thought that the truck shut off because it was just so still for probably 8, 9, 10 seconds. And I'm grateful that I have been able to learn and have my dad as a mentor there and just behind me, and everyone, teaching me and helping me and giving me tips and tricks along the way to be able to be as good of a driver as I am.
What drivers do you currently watch, from Monster Jam, other, companies? Who are you watching right now and trying to take some influences from, because I've obviously seen what Ryan Anderson's been doing this year, and it's just been ridiculous what he's able to do inside of that truck. Who are you watching, and who do you take a lot of influences from for your driving?
So a lot of the time when I'm looking for videos and stuff to watch, some of the people that I mainly look out for, Brandon Vincent, Ryan Anderson, Tom Mentz, definitely one of the big ones. Brandon Telechka is another one. He's been pretty good with it. I like watching him. There's just a lot of different people, and everyone's at a different skill level, but everyone is unique in their own way with their driving style. I don't think you're ever going to find two people that drive the exact same way or have the same throttle rhythm. It's crazy watching all the videos, but I kind of just like to take everything and piece it together and come up with my own.
If there's one truck you could drive, past or present, that's not yours, what truck would it be and why?
Oh, and there's been a lot of good ones.
One that comes to my mind for me, Digger 7. After the rebuild, the 2000 Digger 7, 100%.
Man, I don't know. I think it'd be fun to drive the old Excalibur truck or the old Taurus truck.
Ooh,
when they started coming out with the old coilover trucks and starting all the new designs, in particular the one that's at the Hall of Fame, I feel like that'd be a fun one for sure.
Digger 7, Atlanta 2000 just comes to mind. The way that truck could just power wheelie just seemed out of control. That, and then Stomper, the current Stomper, the old Wild Hair, because that truck slap wheelies like nothing else. That truck, that's such a unique piece. Before we wind down here, is there any social media that people can find you on? Follow the Buck, Renegade. Is there anything people can find all about that at?
I have a Facebook page. It's just my name. My dad, my mom have one. We have a Stinger Monster Truck page on Facebook, Instagram, I believe. Buck Motorsports is on pretty much every platform. Renegade's on pretty much every platform. And another thing is, if you ever see any of us at a show, just don't be afraid to come up and say hi, or introduce yourself, or just come talk it up with us, because I love talking about history with monster trucks, and you can meet a lot of great people that way.
And that's one thing that I also respect about you guys. You guys are fans as well. There's a lot of people that distance themselves, from when it's time to run the show and, being a fan. But you guys are fans and everything during like the whole time. And like even with your dad, like I know you're from remembering from back to the trip, your dad has a pretty decent collection of some die casts and stuff like that. And it's cool to know that you guys are still fans of the sport. It hasn't burnt you guys out to where it's just monster trucks. You guys are passionate about that. CJ, thank you for coming on. I know it was last minute, and it was awesome to get to talk to you again. It's definitely been a while since we've gotten to chat, and we'll definitely have to have you back on again, maybe around the same time next year or even earlier, to talk about kind of how your season's going, and hopefully get your dad on to talk about the Buck too. That'd be good to get him on at some point as well.
Yeah, definitely. I was pretty excited. I've always wanted to come on this podcast with you guys. Cheech, I watch you guys every weekend, every show that you guys do. I'm always on here watching. It's really cool. And there's a lot of history you can learn on the podcast too, just watching them, from all the old school guys or the newer guys you guys talk about or talk to, all the stories. It's real great.
Especially if we have Mike Wine on, then we're sitting here for 3 hours and, laughing our asses off, because that has happened before, and we want to definitely get Mike on. But before we go, guys, next week we will have Steve Jones from MTA. That's what Cheech mentioned earlier in the show. Also, guys, check up on your friends and family. Mental health is hugely important. If you're struggling, if you're going through stuff, especially coming up to this Christmas season, message somebody. Message me, message Cheech. If you're having a hard time, reach out. Your life is worth more than losing it. We need to keep you here. And again, CJ, thank you for coming on. It was awesome having you on here, and, best of luck in your next season. And also, congratulations on, all your success. It's awesome to see, how much you've grown in the sport in the last 2 years since I got to meet you down there, and can't wait to see more out of you, man.
Thank you. I really appreciate that, dude.
No worries. All right, guys. Well, again, next week, Steve Jones from MTA is going to be on. And as we always say on the podcast, everybody, keep the rubber side down and the shiny side up, everybody. Peace.